Excited to welcome you to this interview recognizing Human Trafficking Awareness Month. As many of you know, the Blue campaign of the Department of Homeland Security recognizes January as Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And throughout the month, we have interviews, we have Wear Blue Day on January 11th each year, and many other campaigns that try and help awareness around this terrible problem. So today, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Doug Gilmer, who's a former senior law enforcement liaison advisor at the Center for Countering Human Trafficking at Homeland Security Investigations. And he's only been around for 35 years, working at every level of law enforcement. And he's had experience at the local, state, and federal level, and is a human trafficking researcher, historian, and trainer. So, Doug, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Excellent. So HS Today for many years has amplified the Blue campaign's Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And we even do kind of an incentive of win a pizza if you wear blue on January 11th and post the photos. But I find like one of the toughest parts about human trafficking is really raising awareness and getting people engaged so that they can learn more about it and not only protect themselves, but protect their kids, protect their families. What are you finding to be some of the challenges we're facing in human trafficking?
Well, I think from an awareness standpoint, we're still kind of battling the stereotypes that have been perpetrated for decades, right? On what this issue looks like. And there are a lot of stereotypes of what human trafficking looks like. Is it it's often conflated with human smuggling at the border. It is conflated with prostitution. It tends to overlook labor trafficking and only focuses on sex trafficking. And people have these ideas about how the crime is perpetrated, where it takes place, and really the stereotypes or these ideas that have been kind of drilled into our heads for so long are generally false. And then you're also battling the fact that it's kind of a dark issue. And a lot of people just don't like to talk about it.
So set us straight. What should people think of when they hear human trafficking?
So when you think human trafficking, take the border out of it for a minute, right? Because it's not human smuggling. Human smuggling is a crime against the border. It's the unlawful movement of people who, by choice, pay someone else to move them across the border with the sole intent of evading law enforcement. That's human smuggling. It's a choice in which a person chooses to come across the border. Smuggling is also different than migration. It's different than illegal migration, and those types of things. We could go down all kinds of rabbit trails as far as that goes. But human trafficking it's a crime of compulsion. It involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel another person to engage in commercial sex acts or in some type of forced labor or services. It is a crime that affects U.S. citizens, people who were born here, people that grew up in our communities. It's also, there is some connection to the border in that often people who come across the border are vulnerable once they get here, and can then find themselves in an exploitative situation in which they are trafficked. But smuggling involves transportation. Human trafficking is exploitation. Nowhere in the definition of human trafficking or in the elements of the offense is transportation. It's not about people getting on an airplane, being forced on a plane and flown around the world, like the movie Taken or whatever the case might be. It is truly a crime of exploitation. It is a crime against a person.
That's an excellent distinction. So if I'm going to ask for your top number one thing that you'd want people to know about, but really, what are the top three things you think people should know about?
Um, well, I mean, whether it's things that they know about or just things they should do. I mean, one, they need to get educated. Forget the stereotypes. Forget everything that you've learned in TVs and on TV and the movies, because that's typically not the way that it is. We can't rely on the national news because they're always conflating human smuggling and human trafficking. They use those two words interchangeably, and they're really talking about two different things. So I think get educated, number one, as to what it actually is, and you can get all the information that you want at dhs.gov/blue campaign. There's plenty of material, even age appropriate material for different industries, that kind of thing, that can be found there. Get educated, be aware, and get involved. I mean, I think those are some of the big three things that people can do. I think once you get educated and you learn what to look for, you realize that you've actually been looking for the wrong things, right? Because everybody has this idea that, again, it's people being snuck onto airplanes or in the back of tractor trailers or whatever and moved around the country. And if that's what their impression is, or someone chained to a bed or a radiator or in a cage or whatever the case might be, and we've perpetuated a lot of that too with a lot of the anti-trafficking awareness material and things that are out there. But if that's what you're looking for, you're never going to see it. Learn the difference between sex trafficking and labor trafficking, and understand that labor trafficking is far more prevalent. There's much more labor trafficking than there is sex trafficking, but we tend to overlook it. We probably, a lot of us probably see it every day, but we don't recognize it for what it is, because it looks just like people going to work. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And then three, just find ways to get involved, to do something, whether it's to wear blue or to make a post or repost or share something that someone else has posted. Get engaged with at your workplace during January, but don't just do it in January. Do it throughout the year.
Absolutely. Well, I always find it so interesting how kind of stingy people are with sharing, because I've seen you put up a lot of really good information. Homeland Security Today tries to put up a lot of good information and easily shareable things that really could help someone get educated or help them either prevent someone from being trafficked or educate themselves more. And it just, a lot of people don't share, even if it's kind of to good of everyone. So how do you kind of tackle that engagement? I know at the Center for Countering Human Trafficking, you all targeted certain sectors, transportation, like TSA, they do a lot for human trafficking. You go in a bathroom, you see the sign, are you being, many questions about if they're comfortable, if they're being forcefully, held. What is your kind of strategy for that level of engagement?
I think if you really want to engage people, you have to there has to be the hook, right? I mean, I think if we're talking true engagement, meaningful engagement, you there has to be a hook. There has to be something that says that tells people why this is important, right? You've got to you've got to get them to understand. Um, Second, I think there has to be a call to action in that engagement. You have to challenge people to do something, but they're not going to do something if they don't understand the why behind it. And then thirdly, you have to provide an avenue, links, whatever, for people to get more information and to learn more on their own. And I think, you know, just putting a picture up of wearing blue on January 11th, in and of itself, while that's great and it's awareness, and I applaud people for doing it, and the people that are wearing blue are the ones that are, you know, really typically pretty committed to this, you know, to this. But if people don't understand the reason behind it, it often, I think, falls on deaf ears.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that we're kind of talking about the general public or people on LinkedIn or whatever. How would you address kind of law enforcement across the country who are dealing with human trafficking in their regions? What is your advice for them? How can they build awareness in their communities? And what is your kind of advice for making sure that they cover this topic with the due diligence they need to?
Um, First, don't reinvent the wheel. There are plenty of free resources that are out there. Everything that the Blue Campaign does is given away free. So instead of reinventing the wheel, just use what's there. Don't work in silos. I know it's, you know, law enforcement obviously has a duty to act on these crimes and investigate human trafficking, but they can't do it alone. It's not just a law enforcement issue. So if you really want to be serious about it, you have to be willing to work collaboratively with others. You have to be willing to work with, you know, nonprofit, you know, NGO partners, the faith-based community, social services, healthcare, you know, prosecutors, probation officers. It really requires a team if we're going to be able to tackle this effectively. It's not. I think if you put all the onus on law enforcement to do something, it's a very daunting task, because law enforcement just isn't equipped to do this on their own.
Well, they've also kind of been tasked with not only finding the criminals, kind of collecting all the evidence to prosecute them, but now they're being asked to prevent the crimes. And I think that's just a huge bill to hand them. They
It
definitely,
is, and that's why,
yeah,
you know, and that's why when you work collaboratively with others, you know, there are a lot of great organizations that are out there, the nonprofits, NGOs, in many local communities, whether it's the United Way or the Junior League, that will go above and beyond to help with prevention and awareness.
absolutely. Well, that is incredible advice from Doug Gilmer, Senior Law Enforcement Liaison Advisor at the Center for Counter Human Trafficking at HSI, retired. Can't
Retired.
believe it. I know you're not going to sit still for long. We really appreciate your time today. This is Christina Tanaschuk, Executive Editor of HS Today, signing off and hoping you wore blue on January 11th. And if you didn't, you have the opportunity to do so in 2026. We'll be there to remind you, and so will Doug. Thank you, Doug, for all your work on behalf of this issue, and we hope to keep you in our orbit and talk with you again soon.
Thanks.